this is Lynn, your favorite daughter. You used to call me Linny Lamb. I just remember when I was little, I used to climb in your lap and you had that big fat pipe and the big lap, and I was happy as a clam sitting there forever. When I was little, you were sort of like a superhero because you could ski and fly and you could sail. Dad, do you remember that time you took our whole family in the glider? It was me and Brad and Marianne, and we drove someplace in Northern California, and Brad and I hopped in the back seat of the glider, and I remember that big bubble top closing over us, and Marianne was sitting in front of the with the pilot, and we took off, and I was so scared, and Brad was so scared, and the pilot made me release the tow rope, so all of a sudden we were like, floating in the air, and we did an upside down loop, and we came down, and I was so proud of myself because for the rest of my life, I was a member of the glider club, and you were the one who was brave enough to show us gliding. And there are not a lot of other people who have had that experience, and that was really cool. You were fearless, and you still are.
Hey Dad, it's your oldest son Richard, and I was just thinking about some of the traditions we used to have back in California, and Tiburon in particular. And in general food stuff. There were two things that come to mind. One though was every Friday night for as long as I can remember, when we lived on the base of Belvedere Island, we went to Rooney's. Remember Rooney's Cafe right on Main Street in downtown Tiburon? And you would have the same sandwich every Friday. It was a ritual. In fact, they still have it on the menu. It's called the Banker now, number 5. It's been on the menu. I actually checked for years. And it's the roast beef, Swiss cheese, tomato, and lettuce. And fries, of course. You had to have fries and a Coke. Always a Coke, never Pepsi. Then the other thing, Chinese food. Same thing. You knew what you liked, and you got it pretty much every time. Egg foo young, mugu gai pan, egg rolls, and chicken chow mein, and wonton soup when you were in a particularly good mood. So anyway, just some food memories, and it's Richard Matthews, and I'm out.
Hi, my name is Maura Matthews, and I am Dick Matthews' first wife and the mother of his children. Our families knew each other from the New York Yacht Club cruise. Both my father and Dick's father were long-time people who went on the New York Yacht Club cruise in the summer. And I first met Dick asked me if I would crew on the Frostbite dinghy at Larchmont Yacht Club. They were called interclubs. And he outfitted me with this little suit that came from Abercrombie and Fitch, and these little boots that you wore over socks. And off we went. And he was a very good sailor. And you had to extend yourself over the side. When the wind blew, you had to be parallel to the water over the side of the little dinghy. And that was scary. I got that under my belt. And we didn't have a lot of firsts, but we never capsized. And 75% of that fleet capsized one time or another. That was a lot of fun. I would say that's probably one of my fondest memories.
Hey Dad, it's Richard again. So I've got another memory that I'd like to share. And this one, I tell people to this day that I'm not afraid of flying, that turbulence doesn't bother me. And there's one simple reason for it. When we were young, we flew everywhere. We flew to Europe on commercial jets, but we also went up with your Piper Cub, your Bonanza, your Cessna. You had at least 3 small planes that I can think of that you owned during the time that you were a pilot. And we would go up all the time. And sometimes we'd all go up, sometimes I don't think Mom likes going that much, but I can remember specifically going up with you alone sometimes, where you would let me sit in the co-pilot seat. And you would actually, when we were at altitude, you would actually let me, you always had override, which I may not have always known when I was a kid. I thought I was actually flying the plane. But you would talk me through how to how to lift a little bit, how to adjust altitude, how to make a really small turn. Never, of course, letting me have total control of the plane. And I think during takeoffs, you would even say, okay, Richards, sit back, pull back, watch the altimeter. So I would actually get the feeling like I was taking off the plane, but of course you had total control of the plane. And no matter what we flew through, you were always kind of offhand and casual, like, don't worry about it. So anyway, to this day, altitude, I mean, the plane's, you watch all the other passengers on a jet are like, oh no, they're getting all nervous, and I'm sitting there like reading my book or watching my movie and shrugging it off. Like
Another memory I have is when you took us in your small plane and you flew us over Niagara Falls. And I remember the funny thing about you, do you remember how fastidious you were about your checklist before you took off? You had this like checklist and you would name all the parts of the plane and then you'd do a little check and it would take forever, and we were kids and we would sit in the back and we would just watch you. So I just remember you and the process that you went before we ever left the ground. And speaking of the ground, another thing that you brought to my life, which was very grounding, was animals. Dad, I remember when you brought home Minxie, our little black lab, and she was in the garage and she was little and she was running around, and then in that instant, I fell in love with her and animals, and every time I think of animals, I think of you. And so, I bet you have some really cool memories about your dogs, and I think you had a dog named Minx. Am I right there? Anyway, thank you for my love of the wind and the skiing and the sailing and animals, and they bring a lot of happiness, and I bet you have some great thoughts about them too. Bye, Dad.
Hello, Richard here again with another stellar childhood memory from my endless reservoir of such memories. Anyway, when we were very young, we did a trip to Switzerland with the Mercers. And there was one particular day we were not with the Mercers. We were skiing. We were gonna ski down to Petrosina, Italy. The weather was looking a little iffy, so there was an Italian lift operator who was working on the Swiss side. This I remembered recently. And he told us, the weather's fine, don't worry, just go, it's gonna be good, you'll have a good time. So we went up the lift, and by the time we got to the top of the lift, it was gray, it was howling, it was a blizzard. It was essentially no visibility, blizzard conditions. Lynn and I were just horrified. We were just like, oh no, we can't do this. And at first, I think we started to ski down the hill, and Lynn started crying. We sent Lynn down the lift. I remember that. She did not go down with us, but I was going to go, and Mom was going to follow us down. So we continued, and the tears are freezing on my face. That's how cold it was. The pee was freezing on my leg. And at some point, you looked at me. I must look like a scared puppy, and you picked me up and you carried me down to the bottom of the hill. And we were supposed to get down to Petrosina, Italy. That was the whole plan. We wanted to skiing back down to the lift, of course, where Lynn was waiting. But that was one memory. You carried me all the way down, so you were my hero that day. Dad's Rich Again was still one more memory. Although this one, and reflecting on different things from your past, one thing you spoke fondly about was the time that you were an associate producer on The Naked City, produced by one Herbert Leonard, who was kind of known for Elmore Leonard-style film noir, detective, gritty police drama. Like The Naked City, when you think about it, it's kind of been credited as being one of the precursors to very popular shows from the current era, like The Shield, or my favorite, The Wire. David Simon's epic. But really, you could see the origins of those kind of police dramas in Naked City. And all of the episodes are now on YouTube. And I actually watched two that I'm sure you will remember because they were famous ones. Lament for a Dead Indian with Peter Falk and Neville Brand. And then one in particular I think that might have even won an Emmy. It was about the main character who was a police detective being forced to go watch an execution for a guy he'd arrested, called Prime of Life. And I think it has a distinction of being one of Gene Hackman's first major appearances on a major TV show. Back in, I think it was 1960, I think this one ran. Anyway, it was just, you had a lot of pride, and I think you had a lot of fun working on the first couple of seasons of that, and it's kind of nice to be able to go back and see episodes from that show and remember that you worked on it.
I'm Maura Matthews, and I met Dick because both of our fathers were members of the New York Yacht Club, and our families used to go on the cruise that was held every summer in August. Subsequently, Dick invited me to be his crossbight dinghy crew on interclubs in Larchmont Yacht Club every Sunday. And he outfitted me with a little suit that came from Abercrombie and Fitch, and these little boots that you wore over socks. And so I was very warm and well taken care of. It was a lot of fun. We all used to go out to dinner after it, and we had, as I say, lots of nice memories. We didn't have a lot of firsts in the dinghy racing, but we never capsized, which is something to be very proud of, because 75% of that fleet capsized at one time or another, and then the launches would have to come out and rescue you, and you were absolutely freezing. So that's one thing I was forever grateful for. And the dinghy racing is one of the happiest pastimes I remember.
Hello, Dad. I'm back for just two more memories, actually. I'm going to do these quickly in one take. The first memory involves, obviously, none of the ones I've done so far deal with one of the things that you were most noted for in your life, and that's sailing. You were in America's Cup sailing. You were a champion. You won on Weatherly with your brother, Don Matthews, and the famous Bus Mossbacker as skipper, and on and on. And you were recruited out to the Weatherly, obviously, because of the success you had on your grandfather's boat, Vim, in 1958 as one of the last of the old wood hull boats. Obviously, you guys lost by one, the equivalent of a 7-game World Series or a 7-game NBA final in the Challenge Series. And usually the Challenge Series in that era was really the decider of the America's Cup, because normally the U.S. would win. Obviously, we tended to win against Australia pretty much almost every time. So whoever won the challenge tended to win. Our memory was really, as kids, we were there with you, but not on the water. Lynn and I, and Brad, I think, when he was very, very young, still a baby, we would go when those America's Cup campaigns were being waged in Newport. We were there, having a gas, trespassing on private beaches, and running all over Newport, having bonding with each other, the Mercer kids, having some very memorable summers. So those were two for our family. I think those summers were definitely good memories, and for you too, I'm sure, being out on the water and racing with some of the best guys in the world in those days. The second one involves something that was unwitting. You weren't a baseball fan. Obviously, baseball was a huge part of my life, but you took us to Game 5 of the World Series. Me, actually, not anybody else, not Lynn, not Brad. 1968, Detroit came back against the Cardinals from a 3-1 deficit. The key to the whole series was Game 5 in Detroit. That's the one you took me to. Detroit came back from a 3-2 deficit in the game to win 5-3. The great Al Kaline had the go-ahead hit. There was a famous play at home plate involving Lou Brock, the best base stealer in the game, getting thrown out standing up when he should have slid. One of the games that baseball historians still talk about, and you took me to it. So there you go. There's a memory, and I'm out.